Oh, there we go. Yeah. All right. So. What? Yeah, we're blurry right now, so it's 5. They go unmuted. There we go. And I gotta get rid of him. There we go. Welcome to IAEI's YouTube channel. My name is Thomas Dimitrovich, and I've got a guest with me, and I've got another guest offline who just wants to say hi and tell everybody what she does because we just met. Give me your name again. Jamie. That's right, Jamie. We just met Jamie here at the Experience Center down in Houston, Texas. We got Steve Spiker online, and we got Robert from Omaha. Thanks for joining in. So why don't you come on over and just let everybody know who you are?
Thank you.
This is our newest guest.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie McNeil, sitting here in the Eden Experience Center. I'm currently the project engineering manager out of the Houston, Texas area, so managing the Gulf, and happy to be here and great to meet you guys.
It's a lot of hazardous
Likewise.
locations down here.
Yeah, it is.
You know, I was with somebody. There was a lady. I forget where I was at. Oh, it was at a Codes and Standards meeting, a society of
Women engineers?
no,
maybe?
yes, I can't think of the, and they're going to hate me because they're going to hate me when I don't know the acronym. But in any case, there was a person there who she came over and I asked her, so what do you do? She goes, oh, I work for some petrochem, whatever. I said, oh, you're a hazardous locations person, and she looked at me like she was upset and like. What are you calling me? And I was like, no, HAZLOC. I mean, you work in that industry.
Yeah.
I call it hazardous locations in the code. And I had to like back myself out of that discussion.
She took it very personally.
She did. I was like, oh boy, yeah, it's you're not that you're a hazardous location, but you are working in hazardous locations environments. And
Yeah.
that's gotta be exciting.
I mean, it is definitely exciting. We do what we can to help our customers do what they need to do. On our end, I manage PMO, so that's project management. So that's after the order has been,
Okay.
received, and we just take it and go, make sure that the customer is up and running to get, their business up and running.
All right, so your post after a specification comes out and product is getting
After all the
ordered,
specs
all
is
of
out.
that's done.
Yeah, we work with the plants to make sure things ship on time. Anything aftermarket, we help to facilitate to make sure that the customer has like any warranty issues fixed,
Okay.
things of that nature. We do a lot with safety switches. We do a lot with any other, electrical distribution products. So
Yeah.
just basically everything the customer needs, industrial and commercial settings.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming over
Thanks
and
for
saying
having
hey.
me. It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, likewise.
Nice to meet
Very
you.
nice.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, so we are definitely in a hazardous location environment here in Houston. But and disconnect switches are very critical and very important from a safety perspective. So I call safety disconnect switches. So I had this thing for a while, and if you followed me on my social media, whenever I saw one of these amazing products, I would take a photo and then I would say a soldier at work. Because they're like soldiers. I mean, they are on the job to keep you safe. They're here to protect you because what do we use safety switches for?
Well, obviously interrupting power, but also they have to perform under any conditions, any anticipated current conditions, and most importantly, in an emergency.
Yes, and establishing an electrically safe work condition.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we have these are all functioning disconnect switches, and so oh man, look at this. So guess what, everybody? So now I am able to. I worked with Paola down at the international office, and now I can look at that. I can put the things on there. We got Yummy Fudge in the house from Utah. Welcome. We've got Mr. Doty, Jason Doty. Excellent.
All
you know
right.
Jason.
Yeah, right.
Panel 10, my Panel 10 brethren. So glad you can make it, Jason. Thank you. We got Don Ganir. Dawn has
Excellent.
probably forgotten more about safety disconnect switches. You know, there are some people, when you talk to them about a topic, you just like, yeah, you're like,
Yeah, right.
okay. And Dawn is that way just about for everything.
Very well respected.
Hey, we got Robert from Omaha, and we got Laurel from Omaha. Thanks for joining in. You know, Laurel does a really good job of researching the code sections. I'll sit there and I can't think of a section, and she will be like, oh, that's blah, blah, blah. So thank you, Laurel, for joining in. Steve Cavaleris, New York in the house. I'll tell you what, Steve, earlier we had, what was the country?
Cameroon.
We had Cameroon, and I thought it was a joke. And I was like, Cameroon, am I getting, like, I showed it on the screen, but earlier this morning when I was just testing things out, that's West Africa.
West Africa.
Yeah.
Right.
Not to be confused
Do you think it was
with East Africa.
Did you think it was Brigadoon?
No, I thought camera, meaning Cameroon. You're on camera, you know. Hey, Willie, happy Tech Tuesday. And we got Nihad El Sharif. You know Nihad. I mean, who doesn't know Nihad? The guy is like all over the place. I thought they weren't, they were one-armed bandits. No, these are not one-armed bandits. You don't want to do that. Robert, you and I have to talk. Michael Hofkin in the house, and we'll go back to the chat. So thank you everybody for joining in. So John, I had this wonderful idea to talk about disconnect switches. And I like disconnect switches just because of the fact we use them heavily in establishing an electrically safe work condition. That's my passion around these. And here's my thought process. When you think about the code, I don't know who it was. And if somebody is out there watching this, and I'm going to use this, and I can't remember who it was, they made a statement. It was in one of these code, either at, I think it was out in California doing the code panel meetings. And we were sitting around chatting after the meeting. And we were talking about safety by design and designing power systems. And the individual, I can't remember who it was, maybe it was you, I don't know. But whoever it was I was talking to said, if you design to the code, you are barely legal. You've done the minimum that you could possibly do to engineer and get that done. You have done the bare minimum that you can for that design.
It was the least I could do.
It was the least I could do, and if I could do less, I would do more. To quote Palmer Hickman, right? So when you think about the code, and I always tell design engineers and people, we should be thinking about the customer wants and needs first, and then come back and think about, did I violate or have I met the code requirements? Does that make sense?
Yeah, they have to work together.
Yeah, have to work together. Yeah. But I know a lot of people that'll take the first step they go to is they go to the code. They say, okay, I'm going to design a healthcare system or whatever. They pull up 99 and they pull up 517, and that's their anticipation.
And the customer is often unaware that the code is a minimum. And it is a safe standard. It's the minimum. But there's so many things that you could do for a customer that would serve them both in the short run and in the long term.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to safety.
And so when I think about a safety disconnect switch, so my premise and my thought process is, anytime you are working on a piece, anytime you have in your design equipment that you know is going to be worked on, either maintained or whatever it is, if it's going to be heavily interactive by maintenance personnel or whatever, putting a disconnect in front of that equipment, near that equipment, will increase the likelihood that they'll establish an electrically safe work condition. Now, we have requirements in the code for disconnects on what? Motors?
Sure.
Lighting?
Yep. Appliances.
Mm-hmm. And there's restrictions that tell you how close or how far you in fact, there's a debate in 625 during the 2026 code cycle.
Oh, for EVSE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now the twist on that one was they said that the disconnect can't be further than X amount of feet from the EV, the electric vehicle. And then I was sitting there, or no, it can't be any closer
Yeah, right.
and nor farther. So they gave you like, they said, I'd have to look at
Wasn't
the
it
exact
25
language.
to 50 feet? And they tried to mirror the language that was in gas stations and,
Right.
and fuel dispensing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because the thought process was that if that vehicle catches on fire, you want to be able to stop power to the charging of the vehicle, but you don't want to have to go up to the vehicle to do it. You
Sure.
want to be a distance
Yeah, that
away.
makes sense.
Yeah. So in the code, we have requirements, but then there are some of those areas like that I would not have thought in an electric vehicle application that I would need a disconnect like that. I would have just said, well, the electric vehicle charger, I can just walk and kill power, right? Or I can go back to the breaker. I would have never thought about an issue of the electric vehicle catching on fire and things like that, And like you said, around gas stations, I know there are requirements there too.
Sure. I think that's what they're going off of as
Yeah.
an example, because you have a possible location of a fire, and so to cut off power without endangering the people involved in that.
So you have various uses of disconnects, which are all switches. Now, not all switches are disconnects.
Correct.
And this was an area that earlier I made the statement that some disconnect switches, I'm going to go here first because it's fresh in my mind.
All right.
So I made the statement earlier about some disconnect switches, you have to disconnect all the load, and you cannot open the switch under load. And he said, I disagree with that. And I'm like, well, it's in the code. But you were right, because it's not a disconnect, right? I mean, it's a,
I don't think
what do
it's a
they call it?
disconnect.
What do they call it?
Oh, great.
An isolation switch.
Isolation switch. Yeah. you
Yeah,
told me that.
and in fact,
We should look up the definition of just a disconnect.
oh, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. It always starts with definitions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And then we loaded all of the definitions into disconnect. There's a disconnecting means. And, you know what I can do? Oh, wait, we have people. So, Don Gannier. Oh, Susan Scarcey. Excellent. Susan from Fort Campbell.
Excellent.
Excellent. And Don Gannier said, hard to tell from the angle, but is there equipment below the safety switches in violation of 110.26a? Yes.
No.
There is. So here's the thing, Don. There's a transformer down here.
It doesn't protrude more than 6 inches.
No, you're right. It does not protrude. This one does. I think if I put it there, and you can't, I mean, you might be able to see it, Don.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, that one there probably violates the working space rules. But here's the thing. We are in a center, a facility where we have a lot of equipment that's, this is energized. This isn't on demo. This is energized. Ignore the man behind the screen. Okay?
What were you saying about Dan? about him earlier?
See
about
this,
Don
Don,
earlier?
I tell you what, Don, you are not allowed in in any of these facilities. I'm sorry. And you know what? Let's get that off the screen.
Yeah, we should take a picture of Don and put him at the front door. Don't allow
this guy. Jason,
Good catch, man.
Yeah, very good catch. NEC is a minimum standard, can always go above and beyond, absolutely never below, like John quoted. It's the least I can do. And I always quote Palmer, because if I could do less, I would do more. All right. So here's what disconnecting means. And you know what I can do? Hopefully everybody has their copy of NFPA link. Here we go. And action. All right. So here's, that's cabinet. Where's disconnect? Right.
Ooh, slow down.
It's in the C's. I just had it up on the screen. Duty. There it is. Disconnecting means a device or group of devices or other means by which the conductors of a circuit can be disconnected from their source of supply. That is what disconnecting means.
So there's no definition for disconnect, is there?
No.
Yeah.
And is there a definition for switch?
I think, in my opinion, there's an implied definition of a disconnect, but
Oh, an implied. Well, you know,
you like that?
Well, that was
like
very
that?
good. But here's the thing: when there's not a definition in the National Electrical Code, where do
Sure.
we go?
Webster's.
We go to Webster's Collegiate Dictionary Edition 26, something like that. Is there a definition of switch?
You have different types of switches and definition.
Okay,
You have
so
snap switch, etc.
we have a general use switch, which is a switch intended for use in general distribution and branch circuits. It is rated in amperes, and it's capable of interrupting its rated current at its rated voltage. So this is why you can never think of talking one topic. Here's the thing. Interrupting rating doesn't mean short circuit currents.
No.
No.
It's used in motors and motor disconnecting means.
I always associated interrupting ratings with short circuit. But to say a switch has an interrupting rating, it could be rated current is its interrupting rating because it's how much current it can interrupt.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily have to be a fault.
Yep.
I thought that was kind of cool.
No, and that usually relates ultimately to the horsepower rating of the switch.
Oh man, what if I have a switch that's not used on a motor? All right, John.
That's fine.
You still have a horsepower rating?
On some, you would have a horsepower rating on some switches, like snap switches. Aren't they rated to interrupt 80% of their value for a motor? I'm going by memory.
I don't know, but I don't have to have a
recept-
motor load.
I don't see why. Why not? Because receptacles have a horsepower rating.
Yeah, but a regular snap switch would have to, if it's a 20 amp snap switch, if it's a 20 amp snap switch, it would at least have to stop the flow of 20 amps.
Correct.
So that would be, now it could go higher, but I don't.
Yes.
I don't know what the percentages are. I'd have to look at the standard
Yeah.
to see what they actually test.
UL 20.
UL 20 for snap switches,
Yeah.
and then UL 98 for heavy duty switches and disconnects. All right. So you have your general use sidetrack, but it was a very good sidetrack, right? And then switch, general use snap switch. Now, I don't like the word snap switch.
I know.
I don't know. I mean, why was somebody call it a snap switch? I mean,
Because it has that sound when you operate it back in the day.
back in the day, that's right.
Right.
Well, back in
Do
the
they
day,
make quiet ones?
my grandmother's house had a push button for lights. It
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
a switch.
Yep.
I mean, it was a switch, but it wasn't a switch like we would know it.
Right.
They were push buttons. Form of general use switch constructed so that it can be installed in device boxes or on box covers, or otherwise used in conjunction with wiring systems recognized by the code. So that's your typical light switch. That's a snap switch.
Yeah, like you'd have in a home.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Laurel says 110.9
Yeah, it's
is your interrupting ratings.
Yep.
Robert from Omaha, 430 to 110, 215%.
115%. I think that's a typo.
Is that a typo, Robert? Laurel, you got to check him. I always have to make sure Laurel keeps Robert in line. Okay,
Glad
I'm
she's
just
here.
saying. Yes, I'm glad you're here, Laurel. All right, so service parts has zero to do with checking for voltage. Also a place to verify de-energization for lockout. Service parts. I'm not sure if I
Has
get.
nothing to do with checking for voltage.
Oh wait,
Also, a place to verify.
I'm just looking up. Okay. Oh man, we're chatting up a storm. This is good. Don Gannier, checking for the absence of voltage is energized work. Yes.
Very true.
Very true. And you know what I always said? There is nothing you do that is not energized work. Even when you establish an electrically safe work condition, you're still doing energized work in that process, in my opinion. Now, what I can do, and this is where a disconnect switch like this is very helpful, is I can establish an electrical, if I had this, like if this supplied the transformer, which I don't think it does. Oh yeah, it does. That's the 480 volt primary for this transformer. Because this is right next to the transformer and I can physically see it goes to this transformer, when I turn this to the off position, I've increased my confidence level that I have removed power from that transformer. I don't have a window here, so I don't have visible indication that those contacts have actually separated.
Correct.
I could mount indicators, absence of voltage indicators on here. I could put a window, and we do have products that have windows. But every one of those increases my confidence that I have truly established an electrically safe work condition, but I still have to treat it as if it's energized up until I verify that there's no voltage present.
Absolutely.
All right. Good point, Dawn. Yummy Fudge. 110.16 is your arc flash label. Hold on, we're going to get to that. Absolutely agree. Okay, so let's go back. We know what a general use snap switch is. We know what a general use switch is. Isolating switch. This is what we were talking about.
Right.
So an isolating switch says a switch intended for isolating an electrical circuit from the source of power. It has no interrupting rating, and it is intended to be operated only after the circuit has been opened by some other means. So you need to disconnect all of the loads, have zero current flowing, and then you can open up an isolating switch. A good example of that are those. Now, I'm not going to go there. Not yet, because we got to get into the code. And then you have a motor circuit switch, a switch rated in horsepower, that is capable of interrupting the maximum operating overload current of a motor of the same horsepower rating as the switch is the rating. So they have to look at the overload.
Typically, the locked rotor current is what you use.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So the switch has to be able to stop the flow of the locked rotor amps.
Right. You're going to either, in some cases, you have to calculate it, where that's not determined by the code, like a fire pump,
Okay.
and then in like a normal everyday motor, back in Article 430, tables 251A and B, those are our locked rotor current tables, and then that gives us the locked rotor currents that we're going to use to size the interrupting rating of a motor disconnecting means.
I'm the looks. He's the brains. Anyway. All right. So those are some of our terms. So we start at definitions. So are you happy with definitions?
Yep.
All right. So we're moving to 404. Yummy fudge. Yummy fudge. Laurel and Omaha, does 110 explain why a circuit breaker not qualify for a disconnect on an EV? Why would a circuit breaker could qualify as a disconnect for an EV. Depends on where the circuit breaker is.
Circuit breakers, in fact, qualify as a disconnect for motors.
Exactly.
Because they're rated to manually interrupt 6 times their rating.
That's right.
So if you have a 100 amp breaker, when you're using it manually, not automatically, that's where the other ratings come into play. A 100 amp breaker can manually interrupt 600 amps.
So what I'm showing here is a fusible disconnect, but if I had a breaker in a box, say this handle was operating a circuit breaker that's inside, this circuit breaker could operate as a switch. So whenever, if somebody would say what Yummy Fudge was saying, that a circuit breaker doesn't serve as a disconnect for this piece of equipment, I would say depends on where it's at. If the circuit breaker is within so many feet, if my panel board is right here and it was in sight of whatever it was per the code, then yeah, I could use the circuit breaker as a disconnect. If I took that circuit breaker and I put it in a box and put it right next to my equipment and I put a handle on it first as a disconnect. So a circuit breaker can serve as a disconnecting means. For EV, for motors, or for whatever. Yummy Fudge says he thinks he misheard the earlier about what could be a circuit breaker. Okay. I'm with you. I think Tom was talking about a new rule in 625. Yes.
Yes.
So we were
Sorry.
talking about it.
2026.
Yes, the 2026 code is looking at putting a disconnecting means for an electric vehicle charger, but it has to be outside and within a certain bandwidth from distance. Excellent. Yummy fudge. The circuit breaker used as a switch. Just a switch. All right. So let's go back to we're getting off topic. No, we're not. We're on topic. It's a disconnect.
No, discussion's good. That's
All
what we're
right.
here for.
Scope. Well, you know what happened in 2026, right?
As far as breaking this up,
Yep.
I don't know what happened in the scope of this article, but most everything related to wiring devices got moved into consolidated in one article. That will be 406 now, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And then all the other stuff got left behind in switches
404.
in 404.
So now 404 in the 2026 code cycle is going to just deal with heavy duty switches, your big switches, breakers, fusible switches, things like that. Snap switches are all going to be in 406. So the scope in the 2026 changed to an A and B, what's covered and what's not covered. Because we put this text, now in the scope of 404.1, it covers everything 1,000 volts and below. And I believe they added the 1,500 volts DC in the 2026 as well. So any switch, switching devices, circuit breakers used as switches operating at 1,000 volts and below, unless specifically referenced elsewhere. And last cycle, in the 2023 cycle, they added, this article does not cover wireless control equipment to which circuit conductors are not connected because of what we did in panel 2, and you were there.
Yes, yeah. So that's been a point of contention with 404 and that code making panel
Yes.
about wireless control. All their switches are hardwired in their mindset.
Exactly. And the debate that we had, we put a permission in, I think it was the 2017 code. We modified it a little bit in the 2020 code, and then in 20, or maybe it was 20 and then 23. That's what it was.
Yeah,
we put it in the 2020 code. We modified it in 2023.
Even had some TIA action on it.
And we had some TIA action because the concern was, so here was the thing. So what we put a permission to say, instead of saying switches, in the 2020 code, I believe, we put the language that said a control device, a listed control device. And the reason we did that was because we said there are these wireless controllers that can turn lights on and off, and I'm not pulling a conductor to it. I called it, I said lick it and stick it on the wall, but it was a wireless controller that can control the lights directly, the luminaires, right? Not fixtures, luminaires, not lights, but luminaires. Now that could control in the luminaire itself, and we've all do this. I mean, I know I have some at my house, and I've seen in dwelling units where they turn lights on and off, and then we put that as a permission, so you don't have to pull a conductor to a switch at all. You just have a spot next to the door and you stick it to the wall and it controls the lights. But then someone said, well, wait a second. And I laugh at this one because I believe there are ulterior motives. But somebody said, yeah, the code, ulterior motives. Somebody made the statement that, well, what happens if the battery goes out? And then the lights go out in the room and you're in an area that is dark. And I was like, the light bulb can burn out. The power could go out.
That's true.
There's so many reasons that a light can go out while you're in the room. So then we said, okay, if the battery expires,
I think the concern was egress.
Yeah.
So if you had a light, there's particularly in an egress path, and that control means were to fail due to power failure, and you didn't know it, and then you couldn't turn on your lights in the case of an egress to leave the house.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I know who was behind that.
And obviously we don't have to agree either. So in any case,
It's a valid concern.
It's a valid concern. So we put a requirement in the code that said if the battery expires, for the lack of a better word, then the lights should automatically turn on.
And I think, yeah, and then the TIA corrected that. I think rightfully so.
Right? The TIA said that's a safety concern, but here's the thing. if I'm working on a light,
Mm-hmm.
do I rely on the light switch as my disconnect? Can I rely on my light switch? Can I lock and tag a light switch out? I mean, as an electrician, you're carrying a belt and you're going into a dwelling unit. Do you turn the light switch off and go, all right, now I can work on this because it's de-energized, or do you go back to the breaker?
Well, whatever you're going to do, it should be locked and tagged out.
Right.
And so they do make kits to go onto a switch, a snap switch, to tag that out. Yep, they do. Although that not too many people have those laying around. I would go back to the breaker and turn it off.
Yeah.
And then, but you know,
Yeah.
and that's the argument against that TIA is that, well, the proper thing to do is it's like, you know, but that's not the right mindset.
Right. So then when that went in the code, everybody was looking.
Hold on.
Yeah.
What I mean by that's not the right mindset, I want to clarify. That before the comments come rolling in, is that from a code standpoint, a lot of times people will use an argument against a position in the code saying, well, if it was done right, we wouldn't need this code requirement. Okay? So that you see that in a lot of code discussions. And so that's not what I'm advocating here. But I think the TIA said, you know, if you have the TIA, if you have this thing and the battery fails, it comes on, it could energize the luminaire while someone is working on it. Clearly a safety hazard that wasn't considered by the code making panel the first time around. So
Michael Hofkin says the battery expires and the light goes on. This was a huge mistake by the CMP. I'm glad it was fixed. Yeah. So we had
Agreed, Michael.
Yeah. So, and then a switch is a device, not an outlet. Here we go. Oh, man, you got to go there, Michael. You're like a magnet for that stuff. Come on. What is Yummy Fudge wrote a book. Hold on. Why can't a switch be both a switch and a type of outlet at the same time? Is there anything? So Yummy Fudge went there first. Michael Hofkin was sort of like mic dropping it. Mic dropping it. Michael Hofkin, mic dropping it. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not an outlet. It can't be both, in my opinion. It's a wiring device. All right. Okay. So we had to add that in 404 to say, look, we're not covering that. Nobody's covering that. Switch connections. 404.2 has your 3-way and 4-way switches. That basically just says you don't have to pull neutral, right? Ungrounded, where a metal race, shall be wired so that's only in the ungrounded conductor, where in metal raceways or metal armored cables, wiring between switches on shall be in accordance with 300. Switch loop shall not require a grounded conductor. Then you have your grounded conductors, and we have a requirement when you're putting a snap switch, you have to pull the neutral. You have to pull the grounded conductor.
Generally, yes.
Yes, but there are some exceptions for that. But and the reason was, and I remember that debate, that was because we had these occupancy sensors that required power, and people were powering to the equipment grounding conductor.
That's what they were intended to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, historically, yes.
Yep, and that was ungood. Article 250, Don Gannier knows the section for objectionable currents.
5.6.
5.6? I don't know.
Somewhere
early.
Close there.
It's somewhere early.
It's the
lower numbers.
I can see it on the page.
And here switches controlling lighting loads. So this is 404.2c. The grounded circuit conductor for the controlled lighting circuit shall be installed at the location where switches control lighting loads that are supplied by a grounded general purpose branch circuit. Now, I remember when that went in, that was Donnie Cook was hot and heavy on that one, because he started seeing more and more of these occupancy sensors going in, and he would not permit it. Oh, yeah. And they're designed, like you said.
Using 250 as his justification?
Yes. Saying objectionable currents. You can't power that. You can't power a device between hot and the equipment grounding conductor. That's just ungood. So he was saying, not in Shelby County. And then he made a bunch of public inputs. Well, not a bunch, probably one. And then stirred the pot. And now we have language that says, you have to pull that neutral. Now, there are some extensions, and we fixed this. So I was looking at this today. A grounded conductor shall not be required to be installed at lighting switch locations under any of the following conditions. And you and I were talking about this one. And that's
a while back.
Yeah, and I got it changed. I made the public input and public comment, or actually public comment, where lighting in the area is controlled by an automatic means, they said, they left that language by a remote automatic means, not local. So if I have, and the reason is,
energy management.
Right. So
PCS.
that was the whole point of this, is like, if I have an energy management system controlling the lights, then I don't have to pull a neutral, because I'm not going to put an occupancy sensor there because it's being controlled somewhere else.
Yeah, like commercial lighting for a store would be a good example.
Exactly.
Business hours, the lights are on.
And the problem I had with this 903, it says where lighting in the area is controlled by automatic means. Well, if I put an occupancy sensor in there, it's controlling it by automatic means.
Correct.
Then I wouldn't have to pull a neutral.
Correct.
And that would not be good. So we cleaned that up in the 2026 code. So if you're looking at your, he said 250.6, Don Gannier. See that?
See, I was half right.
Look at that.
I was right. I just said 5 first.
Yep,
It's been a
250.6. And Michael Hofkin and Willie and crew are going around about the outlets. Article of the scope. Oh man, this is what I love about the chat. I mean, there's just so much to be learned in the chat. And if that's true, 404 doesn't contain outlets anymore. 404 never did contain it. Never did. So you are absolutely right, Mr. Snyder. Finally, you're right. Look at that. We found one. Just kidding. Anyway, so exception, the connection requirement shall not apply to replacement or retrofit. So what that does is, if you have an existing installation, then you don't have to pull the neutral, pull the grounded conductor if it was prior to the local adoption of 404.2c, and where the grounded conductor cannot be extended without removing finished materials. So they put some restrictions on that. Because the whole thing, otherwise you cannot install you're not supposed to install any type of occupancy sensor controls or anything.
Yeah,
like
so originally when you had these motion sensors, and back in the incandescent world, we would just have a little bit of leakage current going through like the filament of a lamp, a couple milliamps keeping the sensor alive.
Yeah.
And then with the advent of other lighting technologies, fluorescence and what have you, then they said, well, let's just use the EGC. You put a grounded conductor there. It's only a couple milliamps. It's no big deal. And then we came into other issues, and then now we in fact, I remember I had an old switch that I connected up to an LED, and it was like a disco in there.
Yes.
Because it was using the neutral.
Yep.
I mean, excuse me, the total hot path. It wasn't a EGC on it.
Yep.
And so what I did was I made it control a relay.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah, because then the a couple milliamps isn't enough to operate the relay.
Yeah.
And then the relay operated the LED.
That's smart. Now, I have a case, though. Here's another case of when the strobing. I learned this a while ago. The snap switch, or the, I had an occupancy sensor in my basement, the house I sold. When I first got married, my wife and I moved in. I moved into her house. It was a nice small home. We did the basement. I put the occupancy sensors in. So my brainchild was that, hey, you come downstairs in the morning and you're going to go, say, get some clothes out of the dryer. You walk down and you walk in with a basket, so the lights automatically turn on. And then when you walk out, the lights automatically turn off. So nice. And I put an override in the laundry area so that you can manually turn them on if you're in there folding clothes or whatever, right? Not moving. Have an override, so you turn it on and off. So when I first put them in, I brought Bobby Joe down. And I said, hey, I want to show you. I turned this thing on. So I was standing outside. I said, walk in there. And she walked into the area, and it just started strobing. And it was because I had the wrong light. The light that I had, I think, was compact fluorescence.
Yeah.
And it wasn't compatible with the switch. I had to change out all of my lamps. Mm-hmm. My lamps were not compatible. So I learned that early on, and that's probably gotten a lot better. That was a long time ago. It's probably gotten a lot better from a compatibility perspective, but you have to think about what is the lamp listed and how is it tested. So they're still going back and forth. Let's take a look. What is, wait, here, we got to go up in history. The reason I ask the question every once in a while, a switch can't be both, is because I hear these responses. I just don't understand why it can't be both from a safety. You're saying both an outlet? An outlet is a point on where you take power. And a switch does not consume power. I guess you know what he's saying.
Let's see, what's the question?
I know what he's saying.
I question everyone. The switch can't be both. It's because I hear these responses.
I get what he's saying, because you're powering. If it's a general snap switch, you're just interrupting the flow of current. It's not if it doesn't meet the definition of an outlet, of a place where you take power from.
But it's a device.
It's a device. But what about a device that is an occupancy sensor that you're powering?
Okay, I think in the definition of device, wasn't there, it says, like primary use to control power, the primary purpose of which is to control power? I
mean
believe.
For outlet?
No, for switch or device. Look up device.
I'm looking at device. So device says a unit of an electrical system other than a conductor that carries or controls
Electrical as its primary
principal function. So that's its principal function. It's not a user of energy.
Right.
Its principal function is to control, although it is a user.
And that principal function language, I think, was put in there because you had switches that had night lights on them.
Yeah.
And so that was using power. Therefore, it's utilization equipment. It can't be defined as a device. So they needed to delineate that no, that is still a device, even though it's using power. It's not.
Oh, man. See that? Yummy fudge? You asked for it. You got it. All right.
That was it back in, what, 90?
But until it changes, I
2002
will always
code?
listen to y'all with more experience than I. God bless you, brother. A switch can't be a device and an outlet per definition. That's true. And we just explained the nuance there, because I get it. I get it. It's not the switch. It's the outlet. So that outlet, it's not that the switch can't be. It's the outlet that's there. It's that box where you have the wires. That is not an outlet. The switch can't be an outlet, but where you're taking power. All right. And okay, let's move on. That was a good diversion.
It's going to be a two-part. It's going to be a
It's a
two-part
twofer? It's a twofer? What time is it? No. Remember, here's what they're going to do. If you want an in-depth review of Article 404, then you're going to have to subscribe and pay for the online YouTube membership to get the class on switches. You see how we're doing this? So this is piquing your interest. And not that I have a class yet out there, but there will be. But if I did, but so these meetings are fed from the chats and discussion like we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want a class on switches, that is either you pay IAEI to come out and do a class, or you have an online class through IAEI. And what we're working on that will be here shortly is a YouTube resource for a very economical monthly fee. It's like $4 or whatever. Then you have access to more in-depth formal training. This is the hook. That's right. That's the hook. All right, So Steve Cavaleris. Oh, here we go. Tom, would you consider a light switch that has a built-in nightlight as just a switch, or as a utilization equipment and a switch? We just answered that, Steve. It is a switch. Its primary function, it's a device. It's a device, and it's a switch.
Because its principal function is to control. Its principal function is not to consume power.
And that's based on the definition of device.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Tom, would you consider this is the hook? Michael Hofkin, the nightlight in a switch has been addressed in the definition of device. Yes, look at that. They're catching up. You're listening.
You know
What?
The chat window is the best part of this.
Oh, exactly. That's why I love
That's why we're here. We're here to get the chat window going.
I'm telling you. So the that's why I like putting the chats, and I hope you guys. We had to we made this happen. I mean, I was on the phone this morning with Paola, and we got this so that I can display the chats.
That's what Don just said.
The discussion is exactly why they should have accepted his public inputs to say that the outlet is where the branch circuit conductors connect to the load.
Didn't they do that?
No. So here's what they did, Dawn, and I covered this. Dawn, I think I covered it on IAEI. I think we actually looked at the language. No, it was on a different channel. I think it was on my channel. I can't remember. But they screwed up your public comment. His public comment, I thought, was very well written. But what the code panel did, they made it so that a receptacle outlet is not a receptacle outlet anymore.
Right.
The way they wrote it, the way he wrote it, he actually put...
I remember seeing it now.
Yes. And Dawn, I you know what they say?
Let it go.
Let it go, man. Let it go.
Until 2029.
Better luck in 2029. And if, what's funny was I was talking to a group, you gotta love this, talking to a group of people in our company, and I said, in codes and standards, especially in the NEC, there was a change I was trying to get. And it was when I was young and naive. And I said, it took me 9 years to get this done. And everybody's like, what? I said, yeah, 9 years. They were like, wow, how many meetings is that? I said, it's 6. 6 meetings. And they were like, 6 meetings in 9 years. I'm like, well, yeah, that's the process. Every cycle is 2. Yeah. And I finally figured it out. It was actually 6 years. So 1 meeting a year, basically, 6 meetings. And I finally figured out, because I had made the proposal in the wrong article. And that's when I learned how critical placement was. But Dawn, yes. All right. Where's Dawn?
There he is. Look.
Where?
I'm going to say a cam. He's going to...
certified of bending motion. Wow, I like it. But
See you in Vegas.
See you in Vegas, Mr. Gannier. And you know what? Sometimes certified amending emotional motion. Some of them become CAEMs. All right, yes. All right. Okay, so let's get back to this. It's 9:41. All right, or no, what time is it? Oh, it's 11:48. We still got about 10 minutes. All right, so we went over that. Enclosures, switches, and circuit breakers shall be externally operable. All right, so that means like this here. This is a fusible disconnect. Fusible disconnect. They're externally operable. I don't have to open the door. Now, in some cases, if there's a circuit breaker, I may have a rotary disconnect, even if it's a fusible disconnect. It doesn't have to be a handle this way. It could be rotary as well. So there are a lot of different types of ways to turn things on and off inside. So in general, though, you have to have that external. There are 2 exceptions: pendant and surface type snap switches and knife switches mounted in an open face switchboard. Wow, open base. Are we allowed to even make those anymore?
Probably not allowed to make them anymore, but they could still exist.
They do exist.
We got some cool pictures of some.
I know. Switches and circuit breakers installed in accordance with 110, blah, 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 shall be permitted without enclosures. Ooh, this was an interesting one. Used as a raceway. So the box. This says that you cannot use the box as a junction box, an auxiliary gutter, or raceway for conductors feeding through or tapped off. But you can, based on 312.8. If you look at 312.8, it gives you the fact that what 312.8, so here's the concern. If you're bringing conductors through the box, like through this enclosure, this is a switch, right? So if I'm bringing conductors through this switch, what I got to think about is how much wiring space I have in here. So the way the rule reads, I believe, and Dawn, correct me if I'm wrong, if this is greater than 75% full, I can't just bring a conductor through.
Yeah, and I think it's 75% including splicing devices.
Including splicing
devices. Because you're going to be splicing. Well, maybe not, but you're passing through, yes.
Yeah. So if it's 75% full, I can't splice or I can't pass through.
No way.
Because it's already met its maximum. The other thing is if my conductors that are passing through my space, calculated space, exceeds 40%. I can't exceed 40%. And then there was another one in there too. I can't remember. But they give you rules. They basically say, oh, just click on it. What am I talking about? I should be able to. There it is. Yeah. The total of all conductors installed in any cross section of the wiring space does not exceed 40% of the cross sectional area of that space.
Mm-hmm.
The total area of all conductors, splices, and taps installed at any cross section of the wiring space does not exceed 75%. And then the bending space, right? So bending space in general, I have to have proper bending space,
Sure.
but they say a 4 and larger has to comply with 314.28A2, and then they have to have a warning label that says there are other conductors from other sources in here, and it has to tell you where to do the disconnect.
Right.
So you're thinking about wiring space, and you're thinking about the electrical worker who might be in here. And
I think 312 is an article that is often overlooked.
Wow.
When it's like deflection of conductors, giving them proper bending space for making determinations,
Sure.
sizing the equipment. When you're introducing a larger branch circuit conductor, maybe than was anticipated, having enough room between the terminals and the wall of the enclosure.
Right.
All of that can really catch. And these are expensive mistakes.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Because,
yeah.
Yeah, these can be very expensive mistakes. Because by the time it gets to this point, the infrastructure is installed and it's a do-over.
Oh boy. Yeah, because you're pulling wires back out again. You have to figure out how to route them through. You probably have to put another junction box in. It becomes a nightmare. Yeah. Yeah. So all right. So that's the use as a raceway in 404. Damp or wet locations. Here's my thought on this. 404.4. I don't care. Any product that you put anywhere, it has to be used within its listing. I can put damp and wet locations on anything, on a receptacle, on a light switch, on a light. Any type of product, no matter what it is, you have to install it per its listing. So switches are no different. I don't even know that I need a 404.4. I mean, what does it say? Surface mounting switches or circuit breakers. The surface mounted switch or circuit breaker shall be enclosed in a weatherproof enclosure. Duh. I mean, that's like a chapter 1 thing, isn't it?
That's what I was just thinking. But we see this language throughout.
I know, but
Whether it's
I'm
damp
sitting
and
there
wet
saying,
locations.
I know.
You see it for luminaires, you see it for receptacles, you see
I
it for
know.
switches.
It should be,
You know.
anyway. I'm looking at 404.4 and say, look, if it's outside, make sure it's listed for the application, period.
Right. And then as soon as something's listed, it brings in 110.3.
Exactly.
So
You're following the manufacturer's instructions for 110.3, 110.3b. And then 404.5, time switches, flashers, and similar devices. So the first thing that brought to my mind in my basement in the past, I used to have the little gray box. I can't remember who makes it. It had a little yellow dial inside, and you had to set it for the time, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
would rotate. Okay?
there's a little motor in there, yeah.
There's a little motor in there, and it would slowly rotate. And then on the time, there were these two
They're called
clips.
dogs. They're called dogs.
Okay, we had 2 dogs. And I have 2 dogs. I have 2 labs. What a coinkydink. So I had, you have to move the dogs by the times. And then if when the times changed, I'd have to go down and move it forward or back an hour.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I always left the shut off at the same time. So I was always only moving one. Now I got rid of those because now I have all this wireless stuff and Siri and
Yeah.
Alexa does it all for me. So what this says, and anytime, oh look, Alexa came up, shoot. Anytime that I went in there to do that changing of the time, I never had to worry about exposed conductors. I used to think about it,
Right.
but they were all guarded. And look at this, it says, time switches, flashers, and similar devices shall be of the enclosed type or shall be mounted in cabinets or boxes or equipment enclosures. Energized parts shall be barriered to prevent operator exposure when making manual adjustments or switching. So that was the perfect example of that one. And thank God for the code. And that's driven by the standard. That's my other issue. That 404 tells me all switches have to be listed. If it's a timer switch, a flasher, or similar device, that's a part of the listing. And if you have a device that's not barriered, You violate the listing if you try to add barriers. So it's a part of the listing. I mean, it should be a listed device. If it's listed, if it's a listed timing switch, it has to have the barriers as part of the listing. Wouldn't you agree?
It seems, does it? I mean, is that true in the listing?
Yeah, Michael Hofkin in the house. Come on, brother. I mean, it's required to be listed. Yeah. In fact, that was.
Is that part of the listing for those switches?
It has to be.
Okay.
It has to be, because let's say it wasn't. Let's say that, for example, I have this timer and I have exposed. What am I going to do? Fabricate a little barrier or put some plastic over it? Violate the UL listing of it?
I got you.
You know, I mean, that's a part of the listing. So I would say, get rid of it. You don't need it. You covered it by saying it shall be listed. Positions and connections of switches. Now, here's the other good one. Up. So, up is on, down is off. Okay. Then I read this. Single throw knife switches shall be placed so that gravity will not tend to close them. How would gravity close this if up is on, closed, and down is off? Yeah.
That's why that's made that way.
There's another requirement, and not all switches are required to be off and on in those positions.
Yep.
Double throw.
But this is single pole knife switches shall be
Single
placed
pole.
so that gravity will not close them.
Well, I mean, and there's another location where it says up in single pole has to be on. So what is this, like for use on the space station X? I mean, think about it. I don't know. I'm having trouble with that one a little bit.
Single throw, sorry, not
Yeah.
single pole.
Single throw
I
knife
misread
switches. Yep. And then you have double throw. Okay, either vertical or horizontal, where the throw is vertical,
So
integral.
this is compliant.
Yes. Yep. But where's it at? Indicating here it says where these switch or circuit breaker handles are operated vertically rather than rotationally or horizontally, the up position of the handle shall be the closed on position. But there are two exceptions. Two. Listen. Vertically operated double throw switches shall be permitted to be in the closed on position with the handle in either. That, I think, that's a double throw, not a single throw.
Right.
What's Dawn? Wait, hold
Three-way.
on.
Three-way switch.
Yummy fudge. Thanks everyone for the great chat. All I know is my fault. We went down a tangent. No, you guys are awesome. Yummy fudge. Thanks for joining in. This is all great stuff. You violate the listing. Robert from Omaha. Laurel, don't forget to like and subscribe. Yes. Oh, you know what? I have a. Hold on. I thought. Watch this. Hold on. I need to play that too. Jeez, oh man, that works. I meant to do a. Anyway, I can't find it. All right, doesn't say that you can install it upside down. It doesn't say top on it, so you can install it upside. Michael Hofkin, AFCI protection is required for outlets and devices. The switch is a device. Yep, they're still going over that. Duck seal. I love this stuff. Thank you for the stream, Steve. Excellent, thank you. Hey, this stream wouldn't be anything without you guys. I'm telling you, and John. I await the event that Article 404 recognizes transfer switches in the scope. We just talked about that because there are different types of switches, remember?
Yep, we were reviewing the different types of switches.
Let's go back to, go ahead.
I think Don said there's nothing saying you can't mount something upside down, but sometimes manufacturers will have instructions.
Oh, yes.
As far as from a code standpoint.
But you have to, like a panel board. I can put a panel board upside down, but then we would have the breaker would be oriented. If the breaker turns on and off left and right,
yeah,
I can switch it. If the breaker turns on, up, off, down, when I turn it upside down, I'd have to deal with that.
But the manufacturer allows it.
Right, right. But the manufacturer may have a kit to say, look, you need to switch this or whatever. All right, 404.7. 404.8, accessibility and grouping. All switches and circuit breakers use of switches shall be located so that they can be operated from a readily accessible place. That's a readily accessible. Oh, the exception are busway. We got busway up here. There's a switch up there.
Yep.
In some places, you'll have disconnects that are and there's a permission that up may not be on in those applications as well. But you have clear indication that that's on and off. I wish you guys could see this. Maybe, oh,
We can just twirl it around. Can we do that?
no, you know what I can do?
Transfer it to the phone.
Watch. Wait, watch this. Let's try this. We're at the end anyway, so I'm going to add an automatic group. Hey, how's it going, sir? Where is, how do I add? I'm going to add a camera. Here we go, down here. Add a camera. I have to select a source. Bear with me, gentlemen and ladies. I am going to pick TD camera. Hold on. There we go. All right,
That's
so
amazing.
isn't that awesome? I can't zoom in though. Ooh. There is a disconnect up there, up at the top, that shows the disconnect on the busway. That is right up here. That is way up on the top. I don't know if there's any other busway around here. I don't see anything up around in these locations. But let's do.
Too bad that's not wireless control.
I'm gonna just boom. It is wireless. I could take that off, but I didn't. Trying to think of what else. So anyway, the busway will have a disconnect as well. Hey, Steve, you're welcome, buddy. Larry Griffith. Originally, switches was a telegraph switch with no springs. He says, apparently I'm the only individual who smashed the like button. Come on. No, I got 12 thumbs up. We need more. Robert from Omaha. Hey, David, greetings from Robert from Omaha. We're saying hi to each other. That's what I love about the chat. Everybody talks to each other. And then if you refresh your screen, you can see how. There we go. All right. So, and then Tom, a studio audience. Yeah, I know. I had some faces on there, but that's okay. So, but yeah, there is a way. In fact, there is a way to do that. If I can, I don't think there's my TD unplugged camera. I can turn it on. See that? Now it's remote. Hey, there's the camera, guys. And there's John. So that was, see, I can't.
Give it to me.
Go ahead. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So John's going to walk up over to the disconnects on the busway. That's perfect, John. So you have both of those, and hold it still right there, so you can see the on and off switch on the disconnect, and you would use an arm to go up remotely, and it sticks out so that you can turn it on and off. That's perfect, John. Thank you. That's perfect. I just turned it off. Oh, go over to that switch over there. There's another switch. The one with the door open. This is a circuit. You see that one? Yeah, go ahead. This is a enclosed circuit breaker that has a switch built in. That is, look at that. That is now that would be a good example of a circuit breaker used as a switch. It can also provide overcurrent protection for that switch as well, or for the conductors. It could be a service disconnecting means. Does that say service disconnect, John? Do you know? No, it does not. So it's not a service disconnecting. And it can also have a remote shunt. It can have a shunt trip if we wanted to do that. So there's another busway. What's that? Is that a disconnect? Or is that's a main breaker? That's a main breaker. That's a nice. So okay, I just turned that camera off, John. So there are a lot of ways for disconnects. There are a lot of uses for disconnects. What's that there? That's an EV charge busway EV charger. So we have switches in high locations, switches in low locations, switches outdoors, switches indoors. Multiple pole snap switches. Let's take a look at that. Was cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, I love this place.
Oh,
It's electrical Disneyland.
It is an electrical Disneyland. All right, so we're over an hour, I think. It's 12:05. All right, so all the classes have broken out. Now it's going to get kind of noisy in here anyway. So great discussion, Willie Snyder. Great discussion today. I look forward to future debates. You smashed it. No, you're supposed to smash it only twice, Willie. No, yeah, 3 times. Jeez. No, you're good. You're good.
2 of those were for me.
2 of those are from you. All right, we are going to lose power. I'm at 10% power. Don Ganir says thanks. Thank you, Don, for joining in. Thank you, Michael Hofkin, the Switchbox, and Jason Doty. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I love your icon, Jason. It's pretty cool. Thank you for joining in. Thanks for all that you guys and gals do for the electrical industry, for electrical safety. And I know everybody out there is going to be an IAEI member. Get your membership in ASAP. All right? Thank you, John. I appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure.
You were the man. Thank you. Thanks for being the remote cam. Call that remote cam. And all right, everybody, I'm going to sign off because I am going to lose power here shortly. Thanks for everything. Take care, stay safe, and please stay
Healthy.
Amen. Take care.